Hello, good morning from Boston. This is Ajay Mandrai. For those of you who may not know me, I am the professor of marketing emeritus at the University of Delaware. It is my honor, really a privilege, to serve the Journal of Global Marketing as its editor-in-chief. So I want to begin with the introduction of my team here. My dear friends and colleagues, senior members of the JGM board, and I'll begin alphabetically with Dr. Shiri Gandhi. She is a professor of marketing and supply chain at Eastern Michigan University, USA. Dr. Vipul Kumar, professor of marketing at IIM Indore, India. Professor Weng Mark Lim, Dean of Sunway Business School, Sunway University, Malaysia. And last but not the least, Professor Tariq Mehdi, Dean of McDougall School of Business at the University of Prince Edward Island, Canada. Welcome and thank you for being here with me. It's my pleasure to welcome the audience, and we will roll from here to the agenda. So let's get to the next slide. So I'm going to begin this with a short 10-15 minute presentation sharing with you insights about Journal of Global Marketing. And then I'll hand it over to my colleague, my dear friend Weng Mark Lim, and he'll share his thoughts about publication tips for authors. We will end the session with Q&A with Shiri, Vipul, and Tariq, and of course, Mark and I will also be here. So JGM has been around for more than 35 years. We published the first volume in 1988. We published 20 to 30 articles in 5 issues every year. There are a lot of people to thank for JGM where it is today. Too many to thank actually, but how can I not thank Dr. Dana Lascu, who is our deputy editor, and she has been helpful to JGM over a number of years. She is not physically present here, but I'm sure she's here in spirit. Dr. Quinn Sun, she is moderating the session. She's our senior associate editor, professor at California State University, USA. I'm especially thankful to Chin for she has single-handedly launched the JGM LinkedIn page and more recently the JGM YouTube channel. Chin works with two very able assistants, and I want to acknowledge them. Kimberly Ackerman, she's doing a PhD at UCI, and we have Hasmik Manukyan. She is a student of Chin. She's majoring in marketing at CSU in Northridge. And finally, one more person I want to acknowledge who works behind in the background, but really helping JGM to promote its promotion, Sakshi Katuria. She is our associate editor, Journal Promotions. Let's move on. So really, the basic aim of JGM, my vision of it is to offer a platform where we could invite scholars from around the world to contribute their innovative, cutting-edge, significant research. Our scope is wide. Your papers on any aspect of global marketing are welcome. Next. This gives me pleasure. Our last year, 2023, there were 91,000 downloads, a 42% increase over the previous year. Our articles are available online first before they are published on paper. And our readership is global, obviously. We are read on all 6 continents with the exception of Antarctica. Uh, we have a healthy trend in submissions. Last year, 8% over the previous year. But the way I want to say it, that when I took over the journal to 2016, we used to get one or two papers a week. Beginning of 2024, we were getting one or two papers a day. And more recently, I've been getting two or three papers a day. So the number of submissions, the rate of submissions is growing and it is healthy, and I am hoping it will continue to do so. We get submissions from all over the world, but the four countries which were listed on the previous slide, India, US, Australia, and China, these four countries contribute more than 50% of the submissions. And as our deputy editor, General Analytics, Shri Gandhi tells me based on her analysis that India is in the lead with the US as distant second. So a third of our submissions come from India. We are quick and we have high standards. 0-day average from submission to first decision, 30 days average from submission to first post-review decision, 11 days average from acceptance to online publication. So really, if you think about it, it is possible to publish an article online in JGM within 60 days. And I think that's remarkable. We reject more than 90% of the papers submitted to us. We have high standards. Can somebody help me move? Yeah, it moved. JGM was indexed as an ESCI journal in 2023. Our longer term goal is to have it indexed as an SSCI journal. A sub goal which we are currently working on is to get JGM in category A journals with ABDC list of journals. I believe they are reviewing in 2025, and Mark and Vipul are going to help me get there. So our 2023 site score is 6.8, and we are now a Q1 site score best quartile journal. We recently started the JGM Best Paper Award. The first award will be given in early 2025 based on articles published in JGM during 2024. This is to commemorate Professor Lalita Mandrai, who was associated with JGM from early 90s. But I just want to mention that there is a lot of help for authors available on the journal homepage. And I would encourage authors to review JGM's aims and scope, instructions for authors, the formatting, language, and presentation, as well as the AI policy. The link to the journal homepage is given here. A few final thoughts. We recently started in June this year, Feature Topics FT series, where we invite thought leaders to share their perspective on a selected topic. The first FT paper was recently published last month, actually, by Rick Bagosi, and I'm thankful to Rick for giving us a huge start for this series. I also want to thank Abhishek Bell for leading the series. We have been publishing special issues in the past. I have several editors who help us in special issues and book reviews, including Tariq Mehdi, Shri Gandhi, Mahbub Rahman, he's at Rennes in France, and Aditya Bilor, who is at IIM Indore, India. The most recent special issue that we approved this month, actually, in the last couple of days, is by Joe Hare, Marco Sarstad, Lachlan Redmoyer, and Christian Ringel. And I was amused that these four co-editors, their combined Google citations have exceeded 1 million. 1 million. We also do, so it'll be something when the issue comes up. We also do book reviews, and I invite you to subscribe to the JGM LinkedIn page and the JGM YouTube channel to get to the latest content that we have to offer. Besides these things, we also do workshops and special sessions at the conferences. For example, Shri Gandhi is moderating a plenary session at EMCB 2024. EMCB is a leading conference in India organized by IIM Lucknow and under the leadership of Professor Naresh Malhotra. We later in 2025 July, we are doing a JGM special session at World Marketing Congress organized by AMS in Lyon, France. I think it's in July 2025, as I said. Several of my colleagues are participating in this, and I'm thankful to them, including Abhishek Bell, Shri Gandhi, Katharina Hoffer, who else is there? Ehi Osarenko, and last but not the least, Sean Sands. They have already committed to that special session, and I'm looking forward to it. With this, I want to hand it over to Mark. Mark, take the control. Take it away, please. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much, AJ, for putting together that introduction to Journal of Global Marketing. It's a really great journal. For myself, I've published in Journal of Global Marketing. I've also been the reviewer here, and I'm very grateful to AJ for bringing me on board and allowing to serve as deputy editor of the journal. So what I'm going to do now is to provide some of the tips from our recent editorial, Crafting Excellence publication tips from the editors of Journal of Global Marketing. That was authored by, of course, our editor-in-chief, Ajay, as well as a team of editors, Chin, Tarek, Bipul, Shiri, and Dana. All right, so what you see on screen is something very visual. This helps you to navigate the different tips that we actually have. And we start off first with the first tip, which is to adhere to the journal's aim and scope, right? So in terms of journal marketing, as what AJ has actually pointed out, is that the entire aims and scope it's there on the journal's website. So as what he rightly pointed out, we are welcoming all kinds of topic in the area of global international marketing. And a good way to know what kind of topics that we cover is also to read some of the recent articles that were published, because it's always good to extend the conversations that we already have. And if you're bringing in something new, that's also good as well. Then you can actually show, which kind of conversation you're extending. I think, but what's more importantly is in order to keep the journal contemporary and relevant, is to also reflect what's happening around the world and to look at the different issues that's happening globally. So the idea of looking at issues can be twofold. One is looking at some challenges that may be there, which is something, that we always look at, gaps, challenges, something a bit negative. But you can also look at something that is positive, opportunities that perhaps is underexplored and that we could also leverage on. Right, so that's something that we will actually encourage authors to look at when it comes to doing good topics that will align to the aims and scope of the Journal of Global Marketing. Right. So cool. So moving on from the aims and scope is to look at how do you actually go about, positioning and showcasing the value of the work. I think this is really important, right? I think when we look at articles, I think the way we should look at it is really about, if it was you, would you actually be paying to download this article if you actually don't have access to it, right? Would you actually pay to actually read this article? So that's the kind of value that you actually want to showcase. And in order to showcase the kind of value, is to demonstrate the novelty. What is new about the article itself? What's happening? What's new? And a good way to do that is to really differentiate the work. Again, comparing with what's already there and how you're extending the conversation. To make a good case, there's a recipe that is here. This was taken from the introduction to the editors that we post on our LinkedIn page. So do follow us. You get to learn a lot about us. And this was one of the advice that I actually gave in there, which is to demonstrate the necessity, importance, relevance, and urgency of the research, right? So how do you demonstrate necessity, importance, relevance, and urgency? Very simple. Necessity is this. If you don't do this research, what's the bad thing that will happen? Importance is this. If you do this research, what's the good thing that will happen? Relevance. Who cares? Who is calling out for this research? Urgency. How quick do we need to know these answers? Right? Do we need to know this research now? Do we need to know answers now? Or can these answers and this research wait for 10 years later? Right? So to make a really good case is to demonstrate, is this research necessary? Is it important? Is it relevant? Is it urgent? Right? And to do so from a theoretical perspective, as well as a practical perspective, that would be really, really good. Right? From a theoretical perspective, it's looking at, okay, what are the issues that you're looking at? What's the problem? What's the challenge? What's the opportunity? What solutions are already there? Why existing solutions remains limited? And therefore, what is your solution that you're bringing in? And what's the case for your solution to be able to address the problem or the challenge or opportunity that you've actually just outlined? So making a good case is really important to showcase value. And of course, there's element of interestingness, right? People want to actually read something that is interesting, right? So in order for something to be interesting, first of all, it has to be very clear. So people got to understand it. And following that, it has to be compelling, meaning that, people are convinced that, yes, this is really a problem, and they want to know more about this. And then to do it in a very creative way so that you get the readers to really engage with the content, that's really important, right? And that's one of the reasons why the downloads of papers from the Journal of Global Marketing is really high, because authors that successfully publish in the journal typically are able to show that kind of characteristics. Next slide, please. All right, moving on. So once we have really good research questions, we have really good topic, we showcase the value of that. The next one is you really want to solidify the trust. Trust of who? Trust of the editors, the reviewers, as well as your potential readers, right? That, okay, what are you going to do? What is the method are you going to use to solve those questions? And is this method really rigorous or not? All right. So when it comes to the methodology, it's important to look at what's your sample, regardless of whether it's qualitative or quantitative study or even review studies, right? You will need to able to disclose the sample that you're actually collecting. All right. What kind of techniques are you actually using? So that's the method. And when it comes to the data collection method, what's the approach that you're using? Are you using a random approach, non-random approach for quantitative? Are you looking at, from a qualitative perspective, you're collecting interviews, for example, from which communities, which countries, and to what extent are you actually collecting those interviews? How do you know that interviews are enough? Then you have the concepts of, like, for example, data saturation coming in and stuff like that. Right? So that's the procedure that actually underpins the data collection methods. And of course, not all methods are bias-free. It's okay if there's some kinds of bias. The idea then is to explain what kind of bias are there and what kind of reasonable steps are you taking to mitigate or reduce that bias. So that's important, right, to demonstrate that kind of rigor. But the other thing that we usually look in terms of the methodology section is also what kind of analysis are you doing? All right. Most often in the methodology section, authors typically talk about the instrumentation. What type of measures do they have? How do they go about collecting data? But what they've forgotten always is about what type of analysis are they doing and why have they chosen the analysis? What procedures are you using? Right? And how rigor is being demonstrated to the analysis. Because typically what happens is the analysis is usually reported in the results section, but why those analyses are chosen are typically reported in the methodology section. So I think that's important to actually look out. And one thing I want to talk about here is in terms of the kind of methods that we're looking at, right? As you will see a lot of good journals out there, having a cross-sectional kind of research, meaning collecting data at just one point in time, is usually not very sufficient these days. And that's why you see, that people are using things like mixed method, looking at qualitative and then quantitative or vice versa, or they're combining, study one, study 2, study 3, where, the latest studies build upon the previous studies. So those are things that we're looking at. Of course, longitudinal is also something that you should look at as well. And sometimes it's really looking at different waves and phases that helps you to look at the stability of the observations or the research phenomenon that you're actually looking at. So think about all those things in terms of doing that. All right. But I'll give you one tip here as well. All right. Sometimes, I receive comments from potential authors to say that, how am I going to do multi-studies? It's going to be very costly and so on. So I give you, for example, all right, if you do a survey kind of research, you may be actually doing, collecting data of about, let's say, 400, consumers, for example, all right? Can you collect 200 consumers that will be looking at goods, 200 consumers that are looking at services, and then compare that model to see whether that model does the model holds for these two different types of product? One is a goods, one is a service. Does it hold or not? All right, or something like that. Or even looking at different samples from different countries. So that could also work. All right, so those are things to think about to actually improve the rigor and robustness of the methodology. Next slide, please. So the next one is to look at establishing meaningful theoretical and managerial contributions. So typically when you actually are able to articulate the case from a theoretical perspective and a managerial perspective well, chances are you'll be able to actually explain the contributions well. So the idea there is to remind your readers what your contributions are. And the way to do that is to do it in three places strategically. First is in abstract, because abstract is basically your pitch, right? So you really want to get your readers to know what's your pitch early on. The next one is the introduction, right? That's where you make the case of the gaps and then the solutions and contributions that you're going to make, right? So you signpost that up front. And then, of course, at the end, when you actually have done your research, reported your results, discussed your implications, you really want to bring that up again to remind readers that what you promised, you have already delivered. So that really strengthens the value of the contributions that you have made. Next. Right. So we have talked about the paper itself in terms of the research that you are doing and how you're reporting it. But the next one is also very important, which is to showcase professionalism. Right. This is something that, that many authors, they do really, really good research, but, sometimes when they submit the papers, it does look a little bit sloppy, right? One of them is that, sometimes it's overly jargon. Sometimes it's too confusing. There are too many technical terms that being used that sometimes we don't even understand, right? And of course, with the age of AI, where sometimes we use AI to try to paraphrase stuff, that actually creates a lot of confusion and lack of clarity. So what needs to really happen is that it is important to be clear in what you write, be very sharp, be very succinct. That actually helps to get your message across as quickly as possible. Always remember the first impression counts, right? The faster you get your readers, whether it's editors, reviewers, or your future readers on board, the better it is. Next slide. Is to solidify professionalism, right? So meaning that once you have, written well, the other one is to showcase that you really mean business, right? You really, really want to publish in the journal. So in order to do that, of course, you need to actually look at author guidelines. Author guidelines have specified what we actually want authors to do, right? That's important. There is also the publisher style. So when you look at the latest papers on the Journal of Global Marketing, what we do is we have the section headings and you have the larger section headings, you have the smaller section headings, you have in italics and so on, right? So there is no number system there. Instead of using Fig 1, we use Figure 1 and stuff like that. The formatting style, the citation style, the referencing style, I think those are important to actually pay attention as well, because when you're meticulous and you pay serious attention to that, it shows that you're serious and that this paper that you are actually writing is really prepared for the Journal of Global Marketing. So that actually shows the seriousness of the authors when you're actually very meticulous. But other things of meticulousness is also this, right? When you write something, it's, sometimes you always see inconsistent capitalization. You typically see this in the title of subsections. You typically see this in the figures. You typically see this in tables. You even see this in the reference list as well, right? So it's important to actually make sure that consistent capitalization is used. When it comes to critical information, like for example, when you look at your reference list, right, and we see some missing volume, missing issue, missing page numbers, that is actually quite a put off. So make sure you have those full information over there. right? Of course, I know that sometimes when you look at Google Scholar are missing certain information. But hey, if you are reading the article, you are citing article means that you have read the article. If you have read the article means you actually have access to all those information of the complete citation information and reference information. So it's important to use the papers that you actually read. All right, so that's really important. And of course, the other one is avoid typographical errors, right? Proofread, and proofread. The last point there is referencing software. So it's good to actually have referencing software because it helps you to be consistent in your citation and references, meaning that whatever you cited is referenced and what you reference is cited. So referencing software helps you to do that. But being meticulous itself, the previous point is actually very important because sometimes in referencing software, when you copy and paste stuff from, let's say, Google Scholar citation and whatever not, sometimes the inconsistent capitalization, the information is missing. So you really have to make sure that all those things are actually being addressed. All right. And the last slide. Yes, this is really important. All right. Soliciting feedback. Right. Of course, you will get feedback through the peer review process. But hey, if you can do your best by getting, your colleague to actually do a friendly peer review, all right, to help you proofread the paper and to see whether is there any gaps that you can actually improve, I think that's great, right? Because then the paper that you submit to the Journal of Global Marketing would be the best version that you can actually have, right? So meaning that it is not just you seeing it, not just your co-author seeing it, but also someone else, perhaps not on the author team, that actually sees it. And that's really important because sometimes when you have seen your own paper for too many times, you don't get to spot certain types of obvious errors sometimes. All right. So having a third party that have a fresh look usually helps. All right. So I would say that getting that friendly peer review feedback really helps. Right. I think personally for me, even as an author, that really helps me to actually improve the success rates of getting a revise and resubmit, because that's really important, right? If you remember what Ajay has mentioned earlier, the acceptance rate is about 9%, so about 91% of papers actually get rejected, and sometimes they are getting rejected not because their topics are not good or anything like that. But sometimes there is some silly errors, where there are some missing information or some grammatical errors, and it looks very sloppy and so on. Because when we want to send the papers that we receive for peer review, we want to make sure that the chances of reviewers saying that, yep, this is a good paper, I'm giving suggestions, I'm going to look forward for a revision and stuff like that. We hope to actually do that. All right. But if a paper is sloppy upfront and we see that, that certain things are not very clear and there are a lot of typo errors here and there, then of course, chances are is that even we send for review, the reviewers may come back with not a very good kind of comments. And then it's also prolonging the author's time towards publication, right? So really try to, get a good grasp of these tips that we have just mentioned. All right. If you can't remember them, it's okay. If you just go to Journal of Global Marketing, if you go to the front page, the recent articles, you'll be able to spot this editorial over there, right? The second editorial or second paper that you will see if you actually go and search the journal's website today. All right. So oftentimes, very interestingly, we receive response letters saying that, this is the reviewer comment, and then the author's response, address, one word. Or this has been changed in the paper. That's all. But what exactly has been changed, we don't actually know. And then what happens is that the reviewers or editors have to go and flip through the paper to go and hunt. It's like treasure hunting where the changes have been made, and then going back to see the comments again and see, whether it's been sufficiently addressed and whatnot. So that creates, like going back and forth. And really, if you really want to make a good impression, you got to make it as easy as possible for the editor and reviewer to find those changes, right? So how do you go about doing that? Very simple, right? Of course, the first thing is to quote what was the comment that was given, and following that, explaining how do you go about addressing that comment, right? What steps do you take? What information do you put in and whatnot, all right? And after that, explicitly state what is the page and line number that these changes can be found. And if you want to make the editors and reviewers' life much more simpler, then copy and paste the exact changes that you have made. So meaning that just by reading that response letter itself, you're able to see what was the comment, what was the changes made, where can these changes be found in terms of the exact page and line number, and the actual excerpt of the changes that you have made. So sometimes when you do that, what you will encounter is that your response letter sometimes may be even longer than your actual manuscript. All right. But when you do it in that way, it becomes so easy for the editor and reviewers to review all those changes, because they just have to flip through the response letter, they're able to see everything. And then when they go back to your manuscript, they have another look. Chances are you will get a very favorable decision if you actually take on those comments and you address it very, very well, right? So that will actually help you to increase your chances of making progress in the review process, right? So that's something that we would really, really encourage authors to do. All right. So I believe, yes, now is really the last slide. And
Yes.
yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Wonderful job. Chin, take over.
Do we have any question in the chat?
Just mainly like whether this will be recorded because it's possible that I think most of us would like to go back to it when we are actually submitting our papers. Or
Yeah, I think it's recorded, but I would encourage people to actually go to the journal's website because the editorial of how to do that is there. It's very, very fun to read. I think it's only about 5 pages. So from 5 pages, I read it before I came to this media editor session, and it took no more than half an hour. All right. So, it's a very light read. You can read it in the morning. You can read it while on commute to work if you're not driving. Yeah. So I encourage you to go and read it and download it from the Journal of Global Marketing and check out some of the latest papers there as well.
Yeah, like Mark said, and the presentation which Mark just delivered is based on the article titled Crafting Excellence Tips from the Editors of the Journal of Global Marketing. It is already published online. It is available now. And I agree with Mark. I can't agree more with Mark, actually, that it is worth a read. And I believe Chin is also developing a podcast for that article, which will be posted on the JGM YouTube channel soon.
Yes, we are going to have this article also posted on LinkedIn and have a podcast on YouTube. But I'm going to have this article posted on LinkedIn later today so that if you're interested, you can have a direct link to that article for your review.
Thank
Do
you.
we have any question from the audience?
While we're waiting for the questions, I just want to add some perspectives from an author's view of whatever we've said just now here. There is always two aspects of doing the research. The first aspect is you as a researcher, but then the second aspect is you as a communicator of the researcher. And that is where most of us get so tired doing the research that we're not paying attention to the communication part of it. But we as editors or reviewers, we only see the communication part. So we totally understand that it was great research and it was done very well, but there's a lot of things that you have in your mind and we cannot see it in the manuscript. So it's important that you read it, and as Mark was saying, get a friendly peer review done. If someone else understands the whole picture and the whole story, they will tell you that they understand the whole picture and the whole story before you actually submit it to us. Or if they don't understand it, you will get to know the gaps. There's so many things, even when I teach in the class, there's so many things I have in my mind and I assume that my students understand, and they really don't. So it's a great idea to just have someone else look at it, because you know the whole picture, then they will find the holes for you beforehand. And then the second thing is, nowadays with AI, with all of the other Grammarly and kinds of support that's available online, it's much cheaper and much easier to just put your article somewhere and just find the issues that your article has in terms of the language. If you do some of these exercises early on, you're going to have a lot less work to do later on, trying to address each of the issues that has been pointed out by the reviewer for you. And I also want to tell you that peer reviewers are friendly. They want to make your article better, and we want to publish your article. So we do our best to do that.
Thank you, Shiri. Great point.
Adding to what Siri has said regarding communicating the idea of your article, we have recently started graphical abstract inclusion in the paper. So when you are submitting your article, you also should ensure that you are putting together a nice summary in the form of graphical abstract, so that just by seeing that, people could understand what exactly you are going to portray here. And that's a very nice way and intuitive way to present the entire idea in a very basic summary.
Thank you, Vipul.
We do have a question here. Yes, Sweta, did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes, thank you. I have a quick question. I wanted to hear from the editors here. What kind of articles is JGM looking at? What is the trend of articles also that you all are looking at? That's something that would help us, tailor the articles or select the right articles for, the journal. Thank you.
Can I answer this?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, we are looking at the relevance of the topic, which is there for the current world order. And I would say, let us pick some of the, contemporary things. For example, new technologies. How does a metaverse, affect, let's say, research on global marketing? Or maybe the role of sustainability and climate change in the marketing, that too from the global marketing's perspective. All of us know that a lot of conflicts are going on around the world. How does it affect the global marketing? All those things could be, thought of while probably, looking at the kind of intent we want to present, because these are the contemporary issues. And on top of that, we also want to have a global perspective, since we are looking primarily at the, global aspect of marketing. So that is briefly about, what kind of articles we might be, looking at or interested in.
So to add to what Vipul said, even if you have an older concept, a concept that has been studied a lot, let's say, customer engagement or customer satisfaction, if you have a new take on it, think about sending the article to us, because Journal of Global Marketing is not limited to just services or just products or just consumer behavior or just business strategy. We welcome articles from all of these areas, as long as they are associated to marketing. And if you have a new take on the existing concepts that are going on, for example, I'll give you one example. Consumer ethnocentrism. It was studied, repeated, rinsed, everything done for a lot of time, and then it lost relevance. But if you really look at it now, consumer ethnocentrism is becoming very, very relevant, and there is not much research coming out of that. It's a very old topic, started in the 1980s, and it's continuing to become more relevant. So if you have something on that, that's very interesting. Or if you are talking about global strategies of the companies, we've talked a lot about globalization and localization, but we haven't really beaten it down to all of the details as researchers. So if you have anything in that area, that's a welcome article too. So most important thing is the contribution that you're making to existing research.
If I may add to that, I agree with my colleague 100% when it comes to this. One thing I think, which I think Mark maybe alluded to, and it is in the editorial, when you look at the aims and scopes of the Journal of Global Marketing, the key element to me really is that global aspect and how we look at it. And so I find certainly the papers that come across my desk and my colleagues' desk, those that address issues that have a generalizability across multiple countries. I mean, we want to make sure that even if you are based in a certain country, there are sometimes we have special issues that address areas like China, India, emerging markets, so forth. What we're really hoping to, with this global aspect, is whether your findings, your literature, your contributions really help help us to understand this dynamic global aspect of the world we're in right now. So whatever the topic is, and I agree, certain topic, ethnocentrism, localization, so forth, these are all great topics, and there will be this up and down in terms of their interest in marketing in general. If you are able to position the paper as these are the findings, this is the model that we're looking at, whether it be a new model or something that is already existing, how does that impact what's going on? And as people mentioned, there's so much going on, whether it be changes in the global economy, politically, so forth. It is really about trying to find your relevance. I'll give an example, and this is really, one of my papers, certainly one of the papers I got published in the Journal of Global Marketing. This is a long time ago, before I was dean. We were working with some. I was based in Dubai, and so we were using a lot of data from Dubai to try to, address things like sentiment towards marketing and materialism and so forth. And I remember at the time distinctly, and and very, very helpful reviewers that were, when we first started, we were trying to position it as, okay, Dubai, what we find here can have an impact on the pan-Arab region and so forth. But as we were working with the reviewer, we came to understand that, well, Dubai is not really akin to the Arab world, but more to these multicultural marketplaces associated with that. So when you have, even if you're doing your research in a specific location, being able to attribute your results out to other geographic locations, other cultural settings, different types of consumers across the world, I think that really offers much more depth to the research, and typically the reviewers view that in a positive way.
Thank you, Tariq. Sweta, did it answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you. And maybe can I just speak to this a little bit, in the sense that what if Tariq and all of you answered, Bipul and all, sir, thank you. But what if there is a research article where you look at research methodologies and you think that they apply to a particular space, like the North American subcontinent, however, the findings of it could actually be utilized elsewhere, or maybe you could project it. The person may not have done it in the other areas like Dubai or Asia, but one could think, hey, if the trend is such in a particular space, you could kind of project it in a similar manner, whether it's methodologies as well.
To answer that, first of all, I think you answered yourself. I mean, we just mentioned that we have a special issues on methodology coming up, so that's something that would definitely be of interest to you. But but I fully agree. I mean, methodologies are changing all the time. We understand significantly, for anyone who studied marketing at any point in their life, understands that certainly most of the research out there has been in a North American context, and so the applicability of certain models that are even well-established models in a different context, and certainly the methodology associated with the findings, is something that often plays a huge difference, because we know methodologies are sometimes associated with the geographic locations. Surveys might not work well in other types of countries where the communications are different, or there are cultural issues that that might create biases in how people respond and so forth. So I certainly think that is worth looking at. But again, I think the idea is to try to. I've been very, very fortunate to work with AJ since 2016, and one of the things when we were putting together kind of the updated aims and scopes was about allowing researchers to take whatever aspect of marketing research that they feel is relevant to academics and practitioners in a global context and use that. And that's how we've become so successful as a global, truly global journal, both reading-wise and from an academic contributor's point of view. So I certainly would support that. I don't see that being difficult. Again, I can't, a reviewer would have to take a look at the exact research, but certainly methodology. And when we have people like Joe Hare and the others doing a special issue on that, they're experts on that. So certainly would be people that maybe the special issue is something to look at. I would suggest to take a look at the call for papers for that particular special issue and go from there. But I'm sure you can find some relevance to the work if it's methodology based.
Thank you, Tariq.
Hello.
Yes, please.
I'm Amitabh, sir. Now, my question to the editors is that how can we write the review paper so it will be accepted?
Okay, maybe I'll take that one. All right. Okay, when it comes to review papers, I think one of the common pitfalls of review papers is that authors typically adopt a systematic literature review approach. They may adopt an organizing framework. Organizing frameworks are frameworks like the TCCM, the Theory, Context, Characteristics Methods, or the ADO, Antecedent Decision Outcomes. And stuff like that. Or they may employ techniques such as bibliometric analysis, right? So all these techniques are fine because it's just a way of conducting the review. But one thing that becomes a pitfall is that authors become overly descriptive and they only describe what's there in the literature, right? So in order for review papers to be successfully make a good impression to editors and reviewers is to really not just describe, but also point out what's interesting. All right. What's interesting is usually what are some of the contradictions that are there? What are some of the conflicting findings? What are the gaps in terms of underexplored areas? How do you identify gaps? Very simple. What's in there in reality and what has not been researched? Right. So there are emerging trends in the DVUCA world and so on. So the idea then is to really provide a critical reflection and analysis of what's there, why is it like that? Are you able to piece the fragmented field together to tell a holistic story that you can only tell from a review and not from any independent study itself? So from that perspective, you're not just describing, but you are taking the conversation forward. You're bringing the field forward by bringing the whole range of studies together in your review to tell a story that no single study can tell, as well as pointing out the gaps that are there, whether it's conflicting, underexplored, or unexplored at all. All right. And the other one, when it comes to future research directions, it's not just about pointing where the future research should go, but also explaining why people should be investing their money, effort, and time to pursue that research. So that is one thing that is usually lacking, right? Because it's always about, okay, currently this is what the existing literature is all about. This is what we can establish. These are some of the gaps, and these are some of the directions for the future. But the question is, why should we pursue those directions? Just because there is a gap doesn't mean that we must pursue it, right? It's like, for example, just because no one has looked at the combination of pink and green on sales means we must go and do a research on pink and green combination on sales, right? So you still have to explain what is the importance of actually pursuing the direction. And if you don't pursue the direction, then what are some of the costs that you actually might encounter? So from that perspective, a good review paper would be more critical than descriptive. And when a suggestion is provided for future direction, there is also an explanation of the rationale of why people should pursue the direction. So hopefully that answers the question in terms of a good review paper that would be considered at the Journal of Global Marketing.
Just
Thank you, sir.
adding to what Marcus said, many of time I've seen that review paper people are using a single methodology. For example, they simply put together the findings from bibliosigning from R package. I think they need to complement their findings. They need to triangulate this using another method as well. Even if they are writing the review paper using, let's say, bibliometric paper. So that is also very important. You should keep in mind, I believe.
Good. Thank you, Vipul.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
So while you're looking for questions again, just kind of adding to everything that everybody has said, focus on contribution and impact. No matter what type of research, just first write down what your contribution would be and what impact that research is going to have on future research. If you do that little work at the beginning or maybe the middle of the research, it starts giving you more direction, and it starts making your paper more important for others to read. And as Mark initially said, to pay for, to download. Because ultimately, it's not because there is a gap because nobody has done it. There might be a gap because it's not important, right? So differentiate your research in terms of the impact and contribution.
Good point, Shiri.
While we are waiting for some more questions, there is a survey posted in the chat. Please provide your input for this live event. This is our first live event. We want to do better next time, so please provide your input and any suggestion for the future events. We only have 1 more minute left. I want to check if any of our editor have any other suggestions or concluding remark.
I think it went wonderful in my opinion. I wish we had more questions, but I think we are nearing the end of the time anyway. So Chin, if no one else has anything to add, then we can wrap it up.
Thank you. Thank you to every editor to taking the time to share some publication tips. And also thank you to every other attendees for coming to this presentation. We welcome your input, so please take your time to finish that survey. We hope to see you in the next event. We have another live event on October 18 for the featured topic with Dr. Bagazi.
Thank you, Chin. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you. Nice to
Thank
see
you.
everybody. Hope to see you in person too. Have a good day.
Someday
Thank you.
soon.
Okay, bye.